We've all been told the same things. Owning a home is the smartest financial decision you'll ever make. Real estate only goes up. It's an investment, you're building equity, and you get a roof over your head. And renting, well, that's just throwing money away. But what if none of those are completely true? What if buying a home comes with myths and half-truths that most people don't talk about? And so today, let's talk about some controversial opinions about home ownership, what nobody tells you about the true costs, risks, and realities of buying a house. By the end of this video, you'll see why there's so much more to owning a home than simply, well, owning one.
So much for keeping our secrets up high.
If you're new to this channel, then hi, I'm Akash, an entrepreneur and a product leader. I've built businesses from scratch, taken some serious risks, and learned how to grow wealth even in the darkest of times. And my aim with this channel is to help you escape mediocrity and thrive using the systems and habits that have worked well for me. So let's start off with myth 1. A house is an appreciating asset. The most common belief that everyone holds, a house is your greatest asset. Sure, it's an asset until it starts draining your wallet.
Hey, Stewie, I need some more money.
I lost it all, Brian.
What?
Unlike a stock or a bond, a house requires constant maintenance, like fixing the roof, repairing plumbing, upgrading appliances, etc. These costs can add up, making your investment feel more like an expense. And this is why I heavily advocate for including the maintenance of the house in your calculations to really understand the true cost of owning a home. But there's one major catch with homes being an asset. It is a depreciating asset more than an appreciating one. Let that sink in. It's a depreciating asset. Now, I'm not talking about the cost of the land or real estate in general going up, which could go up or down. But what I'm referring to is the wear and tear a house goes through, which is inevitable, to be honest, meaning real estate depreciates over time unless you pour money into maintaining it. That's why treating a home as an investment can technically be misleading.
So please stop it.
This is something that no one talks about or accounts for, and then over the long run complain when random expenses, fixes, and maintenance pops up. This is something I learned firsthand in my life. We had a dream family home in India that my parents built from the ground up. Okay, not literally the two of them laying bricks and building the house, but they had a clear vision of the house in their heads and they made their dream a home reality. But once we moved in, there were repairs, upgrades, and maintenance needed to be done time and again. So this is something to first accept, that your house is a depreciating asset, and then include a buffer in your calculations so that you get to a ballpark of how much a house would actually cost you. If you're interested in looking at specific numbers with examples, then I'll leave a link to one of my videos at the end of this video that will walk you through just that. We'll also talk about how owning a home comes with its own serious uncertainties, ones that you don't normally consider.
What kind of mortgage did you get?
A 10-year.
10-year fixed, over 30-year total.
I'll break these down later and I'm sure it's going to surprise you. Now let's move on to myth number 2. Renting is throwing money away. Ah, yes, the classic. If you're renting, you're paying someone else's mortgage. But here's the reality. Renting isn't throwing money away, it's paying for the service. When you rent, you're paying for the experience. A roof over your head, flexibility, and in some cases, avoiding unexpected costs like repairs. Living somewhere, whether renting or buying, always will cost money. I personally rented multiple places, but I also avoided all the headaches of maintenance, repairs, and surprise costs that come with the house. In fact, when our rent was raised last year, we found a better place for less money within a week or two.
Jackpot.
And let's be real, if paying for services is throwing money away, then I guess we're all fools for paying for Wi-Fi, eating out, Netflix, and coffee. By the way, did you know that buying a house might be breaking one of the most fundamental rules to investing? Okay, we'll get to that in a bit, but before that, another popular claim, when you buy a home, you're building equity. Technically, that's true, but here's a very big catch. Building equity takes time, and in the first 10 to 20 years, most of what you're paying is interest. I've touched on this in one of my previous videos, but let's actually revisit the math. In a 30-year mortgage, on average, it often takes 15 to 18 years before your principal payments outweigh the interest. So while you're technically building equity, you're also paying a lot of interest along the way. And this just means that you're paying the bank for basically borrowing the amount. And all of this interest is unrecoverable. In a lot of cases, by the time you're done paying your loan, you would have spent enough money on interest equal to the cost of the house itself.
That's actually true. Wait, there's more.
And by extension, you only get to live in one. So that's sad. But if you've watched my earlier videos, you'll know that crunching these numbers is critical to decide if buying makes sense for you. If you haven't checked out that video, then I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this video too. Stay tuned. Myth number 4. Real estate always goes up in value. You heard the saying that real estate always appreciates. I've got some serious news for you. It's a freaking myth. Also, if people have told you that housing prices double every decade, then that too is not the honest case.
Don't listen to them.
When you factor in inflation, transaction costs, and maintenance, the returns often aren't as great as they seem. As 𝘁cie points out in his videos, many people overlook phantom costs, which are basically taxes, repairs, and commissions when selling. These costs quietly chip away at your actual profits.
Sneaky buggers.
And the real estate market, just like any other market, can be highly volatile, and there are instances where the house's costs can actually go down. Actually, this happened to me when my family tried to sell our house in India. The market wasn't favorable at all. It had been 5 years since we bought the house, but the market price for the house was exactly what we bought the place for, if not lower. So assuming that the market is always going to go up is very misleading and unreliable. There are numerous factors to consider. Let's now move on to myth number 5, the myth of certainty in home ownership. One of the biggest arguments for buying a home is the idea of control. People say when you own your home, you're the boss. There's no landlords, no sudden rent hikes, and no eviction notices.
I can give you half.
Sure, that sounds great until you realize that owning a home comes with its own brand of uncertainty. For example, inflation isn't just a renter's problem, it affects homeowners too, especially when it comes to maintenance and repair costs. That $300 faucet you were planning to replace last year, thanks to inflation, might cost $450 now. And let's not even forget about property taxes and insurance costs, those often creep up as well. Then there's the big one, the mother lode, interest rates. You think you're locking in stability with a mortgage, but what happens if you're on a variable rate or your fixed rate expires in a few years? Suddenly that certainty starts to feel a lot less secure. Let me tell you a story of one of my acquaintances. This guy had a high-paying job in media, and he and his wife decided to buy a home quite far from the city actually. And then when the interest rates went up, the monthly amount they had to pay got way too close to comfort. Now at this point, they were paying more than they had accounted for every month, and they somehow stayed afloat. But it gets worse. He lost his job, and this coincided with the writer's strike in North America. Writers got to get their pay! And so getting another job was freaking difficult. They somehow stayed put for a few months and even considered selling the house a couple of times, only to realize that the house now costed lower than what they had bought it for. And let's not even get into the taxes and the costs associated with selling a place. The wife had to take on another job, and he started freelancing to make ends meet. This went on for almost a year, by the way. And he eventually had to settle for a job that paid far lesser than what he was paid earlier. In that 1 year, their lives changed drastically. They depleted all their savings, and they had to take a few loans, which meant that they're in heavy debt too now, and now they don't earn as much as they did earlier. Right now, they're considering selling the place if they get a good price. The moral of the story is that buying can put a lot of pressure on you unless you're really well off. But with renting, you could just up and about leave or downgrade if you want. You don't have the flexibility to pack up and move without paying hefty transaction fees or dealing with the stress of selling a property. Real estate is the best investment ever. This is where things get really interesting. Real estate is often called the best investment, but is it really? Let's compare it to other options. As you can see, over the long term, diversified portfolios consisting of stocks, ETFs, bonds, index funds often outperform real estate. And unlike a house, these investments don't require you to replace a roof or fix a furnace. Unless your ETF or your stock calls you at 2 a.m. because the furnace is broke, I think we're good.
Give me a break.
What a weird example to drive this message home. Anyway, since investments are technically anything you can up and about sell and make a profit, I would argue that your house, especially your primary home, would be an asset but not really an investment. And so here's another challenge with real estate. Selling isn't as easy as people think. For example, going back to that property I spoke about back in India that took years to sell, partly because of family considerations and partly because of the market. The price of houses seemed to have fallen considerably at that point, and so we had to stay put, waiting for the house to go back up in price. When you buy a home, you're not just buying an asset, you're buying a commitment. And commitments can be expensive. I mean, just ask Ben Affleck and J-Lo.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
This means that you can't really look at your house as an investment, but more like an expense or the purchase, considering you're living in it and you can't just sell it one random day. Plus, a diversified portfolio spreads your risk across multiple industries and countries, unlike a house which ties your money to one location. And since we're on the topic of diversified portfolio, let's talk about why real estate goes against diversification. This one's not a myth, but I would say the most important one out of the lot, because the most fundamental principle of investing is to stay diversified. And most people break this rule the day they decide to buy a house.
Hey man, come on, not cool.
People end up putting all their money into a house because they've constantly been told that having a house is the best investment ever, leaving them super vulnerable. A truly diversified portfolio includes multiple asset classes like stocks, bonds, real estate, and more. Let's say you're putting $6,000 a month into a mortgage. By definition of diversification, you should be investing at least another $6,000 in another asset, right? But for most people, the answer is no, especially because of how expensive houses are these days. Nowadays, people are so focused on paying down the house and not have anything left over to invest anywhere else. And if there's one thing to take away from this video, it's this. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a house ever. If you have enough liquidity to pay for the down payment, can afford to pay the monthly mortgage or loan, and still have enough money left over to save and invest, then you should absolutely buy the house. Remember, the goal of investing isn't just to own assets, it's to reduce risk and grow your wealth. And real estate is just one piece of that puzzle, not the whole picture. And so buying a home isn't always the golden ticket to wealth like most people make it seem. It's not like a magical investment, it's not free of risk, and it's definitely not the only way to build equity. But does this mean that buying a home is bad? Absolutely not. But it does mean you need to go in with your eyes wide open, understanding the myths, the risks, and the alternatives. Just make sure it aligns with your financial goals and situation, and not just what society tells you.
They talk a lot, don't they?
And remember, on the contrary, renting isn't wasting money. It's paying for flexibility, convenience, and freedom. If you ever question the idea of owning a home, or if this video made you think, then let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you're strongly for buying a house, or if you're team renting, I'd love to hear from you too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comment section. Oh yeah, by the way, here are the videos like I promised.